Hello there, everybody. This is Alex from Hardcoring Guides, bringing you my Splatterhouse brutal difficulty, no upgrade run. I'm still trying to figure out what those things are called. Those runs of mine. I do guides so much. But anyway, today, real quick, I'm showing you that I have not bought any upgrades. These, by the way, these ones are already unlocked on the screen for those that are not aware. They are abilities you unlock that the game gives you, not upgrades. So, that's what we're going with. Anyway, today we're doing Phase 4, the Meat Factory. This is actually another favorite of mine, personally. And I think it's mostly because, possibly, of, like, the boss fight itself. And also, it's a bit short. It's a bit on the shorter side, about a good 15-20 minute romp. I forget exactly what it was. And something I learned recently is that I actually decided to look up the names of the enemies to finally understand what they were called. I can't remember what the big armed guy that spawns in this particular chapter was called. Again, I can't remember on the top of my head. It had a really weird name. I think it's like abhorrent, something like that. Like a play on word with the word, abhorrent. And these guys, I think, are called homini. And then the zombie type guys, and I think this also includes, say, like the clowns. We'll just call them the clowns when we get to that level later on. They are called the Forgotten, and then there's also like the Fishmen, and I think they're just called Fishmen. But either way, so beginning part of this level is relatively straightforward. You kind of just smack around a bunch of, let me get adjusted here in my chair. Sorry about all the noise. You just pretty much just smack around a lot of these guys, and I should have probably used my other 2x4 fully, just to kind of, let it go to waste, and then pick up the other one, or just at least keep it. I was mostly trying to use the 2x4 on the blue homini. Homini. Whatever they're called again. But yeah, the blue guys, I was trying to use it on them because, well, they're like literally the most dangerous of them all. Because considering the fact that they can kill you instantly. And that's just never fun. So, yeah, of course weapons work wonders against them. I've explained all this before. And besides, since this is a no upgrade run, I wouldn't necessarily consider this a guide, but like I've said before in the past, at least for the first episode of this, is that if you want to consider it a guide, if this is something you want to take on yourself, and by any means, you see my videos and you think, hey, your videos, I could use some help with this type of stuff, then yeah, of course, feel free to use them for help or whatever. That's kind of what they're here for too. But at the same time, I don't want to treat it like it as a guide, you know what I'm saying? So I kind of just want to talk about whatever stuff's going on outside of the video, because we've already done a guide of Splatterhouse before. But then again, that was an upgraded guide, so yeah. Oh yeah, these big guys. I just wasted a weapon on him, and that should take off like a good chunk of his health. It doesn't do a lot, but it does enough. Oh, I guess since this is, not a guide, quote unquote, something I want to explain real quick is, of course, that it's already been explained before, but whenever an enemy, especially a mini-boss, gets knocked backwards, they tend to retaliate. And one of the retaliating attacks is that one right there, that lunge. The advanced version of this enemy later on can eventually do 2 lunges in one go, and it's really annoying. And then the other attack is just like this weird thing that, like the Teratoid, I think that's what they're called, like the big guy with the horns, the one with the tentacle. With him, he kind of does the same thing where he does like an AoE, but it's not that big of an AoE anyway. They're not really predictable for attacks. You kind of just run away and kind of hope that whichever one is correct that you're running away from, and hoping that you're dodging out of the way from. But yeah, so let's talk about some things, I guess. Well, I've been recently going back through Dante's Inferno because I have no life, and I tend to just get attached to games, that I'm not saying that I shouldn't get attached to, but this is one of those cases of I loved it so much when I did my guide of it that I just couldn't have enough. And now I'm looking to eventually go buy it from the PlayStation Vita store so I can finally play the PSP version of the game, because when I was young, and at the time, I think it was like 15 or so, my cousin had Dante's Inferno, of course, on PSP, and I was a little bit upset. I was like, fuck, I want that. Because, like, growing up, I had my PSP, and I loved that thing to death. And I think that thing has infected me ever since then. I don't have a PSP anymore because mine broke, but I do have a Vita that does have most of the games that I used to have on it. Not all of them. Like, I don't have Hellboy, but I had that on PS3, and it's just Hellboy. I'm not particularly too fond of the Hellboy PS3 game. I did, strangely enough, like the PSP one from what I remember back then, but I don't know. Playing the PS3 one is just different, but maybe I've not given it much of a chance. I don't know. I'm sure there's some merit there. I need to go back through it again to see if I can get any out of it. Because when it comes to Hellboy, I actually liked the first two movies. I remember liking those. Those were pretty good. I haven't seen the new one by any chance, but I've never even seen read the comics because I'm a lame loser. But then again, most people nowadays don't read the comics anyway. I mean, hell, when it comes to anime, most people don't even read the manga. And in my opinion, typically, a lot of the time, reading a manga is generally a better idea than just watching the anime, because a lot of the time the anime's kind of cut out, a lot of stuff that, the manga would have or whatever. When it comes to comic books, especially in terms of Marvel stuff, it's kind of hard to adapt everything because, God forbid, you got to have the Silver Surfer showing up in like Infinity War or whatever. But, comics are much different, but Hellboy, I don't know. I think Hellboy is pretty much, I think the movies are kind of somewhat based on them. But yeah, I really need to get back to actually playing that though. I gotta get back to playing a lot of things, like Prince of Persia. I have the trilogy, and I still haven't even beaten the first one yet. Those were games I wanted a long time ago, but then never got my hand on until like recently. And I've also been going through Ninja Gaiden Black. I've been trying to unlock Master Ninja mode, so that's always a fun time when you're trying to, go through an entire game again, but then, like, now you gotta do it, like, 4 or 5 different times again. So, that's my major gripe about Ninja Gaiden, is the fact that you have to go through them so many times. Now, granted, you can skip the cutscenes and stuff, but this is still a long game. Like, if you were to compare Ninja Gaiden to, say, a Platinum game, like Metal Gear Rising, or, well, Bayonetta is pretty long, but I would say compare it to, like, Metal Gear Rising, which is probably not the most fair comparison, but, just using it for this. With that game, like, it's super short, and you can kind of plow through it, go from normal to hard, or start on hard, or whatever, and then, retain all your upgrades and keep going through it, or however you want to do it. But with a game like Bayonetta, it's pretty much in that same zone as, like, Ninja Gaiden, where I just don't want to have to keep going through it so much. But with Bayonetta, I think, at least in terms of Bayonetta 1, you only have hard mode, and then after that you have infinite climax, so you kind of get the hard mode right after. And I've always been kind of the type of person who, since I'm a God of War guy, right? I'm a God of War guy. Everybody knows that at this point, I'm sure. But, I kind of treat myself like the God of War guy. And funny enough, on my Let's Play channel, I kind of treat myself like the South Park guy. It's kind of weird how those two dichotomies work, but honestly, out of all the games I've played, especially on either channel, I think I would probably consider myself more of the Splatterhouse guy at this point, in terms of YouTube, because, yeah, I don't have the most views, but I feel like I'm still the one. I'm not 2010 Splatterhouse reboot. Like, I feel like I'm the only one that's really tried this at this point, so I don't know. I don't know. Either way, I feel like I'm kind of part Splatterhouse guy, part God of War. But that's neither here nor there. So, God of War is what I want to talk about mostly, is, in God of War, you beat the game on pretty much any difficulty, and then after that you unlock God mode. You unlock, like, the hardest mode. That's kind of always been the case, at least until 2018, when they decided to, or at least, I might be misremembering, they might have done it in Ascension. I don't know if it... No, I think Titan mode was unlockable in Ascension mode, or in... damn it, I think it was unlockable in Ascension, is what I'm trying to say. Oh yeah, something else too. You can kick enemies with a microwave. I kind of forgot to explain that, but... visual cues. I mean, I don't know. You guys probably noticed it. I'm just... Look, just ignore me, okay? I'm being dumb. I'm being stupid. And I tend to over-explain everything, even when it's obvious. For the most part. But, that's just a me thing. So, yeah, with God of War, like I said, you unlock the mode and what have you. Now, I think with Splatterhouse, I think originally you just have all 3 modes unlocked at the start. And Dante's Inferno, you have to unlock Infernal mode. I know that much. Metal Gear Rising, you have to unlock Revengeance, I believe. I think you can actually Konami code it and put it in that way, but I don't remember. I'm trying to think of another game that you unlock the hard mode. Oh, I'm sure there's plenty. I just can't remember at the top of my head. Maybe Castlevania. Lords of Shadow might be one of those. I haven't played that in a hot minute. I tried playing it on the streaming service for PlayStation, but then it was so goddamn laggy I couldn't do it. I do have a PS3 copy of the game. I just felt too damn lazy to whip out the PS3 to play it. So, which I need to get back to playing my PS3 because I have a few things I want to do on there. I still got Gundam Warriors to go through. That was a bitch for a while. Was trying to find a copy of Gundam Warriors Reborn, because they just weren't there. And then I finally realized, wait a minute, what the fuck am I doing? It's digital. I can just buy it digitally on the store, and then I did. And then I beat it, and it was pretty good. It was, in my opinion, the best of the Gundam Warriors. So, now something else kind of fun to probably talk about real quick is Warriors games, or for those that are in the know, of course, you know, the Musou games. Basically, I'm more so talking about like Omega Force and their Musou type games, which for those that are not aware, these are games that originally started off, as far as I'm aware, I could be wrong, Dynasty Warriors, which was of course based on the Three Kingdoms of China and all that, and those are pretty fun. I've kind of grown attached to them over the years, and then they made a spin-off with, I say a spin-off, but they kind of did the Sengoku era of things, which is like, you know, the Samurai Warriors, and they did the Japanese side of things, and those are pretty neat for the most part too. And then the thing that I'm mostly interested in when it comes to the Warrior stuff is I'm mostly interested in like the spin-offs. So for instance, like Hyrule Warriors is my favorite of all the Warrior games. I love Hyrule Warriors 1. It's so good. And then, you know, other ones like Arslan, you know, or whatever. I've never played that one yet, but yeah. There's also Gundam, of course, like I said. There's like the 4 Gundam games. There's the 2 Fist of the North Star games. There's the One Pieces. Those are pretty fun. But the thing I want to talk about with those is they have a hard mode too. But I want to bring up, will I ever attempt hard mode guides for them? And the answer is probably not. And I don't want to push anybody away or make anybody feel upset that I would say that. It's just that, like, when you know what a Musou game is, it's generally it's mostly just the same thing over and over again. So, you could say that about relatively any beat 'em up, but a lot of beat 'em ups and hack and slashes and so forth have puzzles. Whereas a Warriors game, typically the puzzles kind of rely on either, you know, get this territory and do this thing, but they're not really anything too crazy. They're just mostly just straight up combat, and then it's, okay, how do I explain this the best way I can possibly can? If you guys know what I'm talking about, then you know what I'm talking about, but like, when it comes to a Warriors game, I don't think there's really any need for a guide of a hard mode. Now, maybe a playthrough? Maybe, I don't know, but even then, still, like, those are just really long and really, really long sometimes. Like, I'm still going through Hyrule Warriors to this day. I have the Switch version and the definitive edition basically, and that's just, oh man, that's a lot of content, and that's not even just, you know, the main story. I've beaten the main story before. It's really short. It's just that there's so much to do, man. But that's why I love those games for, because it always gives me something to kind of rely on and come back to. And I just love hack and slashes. You know, those are my favorite. Yeah, pretty much like my favorite genre. Now, for a while there, I did kind of start saying that boomer shooters were, but I would argue out of my favorite genres, I have like 3 that I can rely on that typically give me the itch. They typically scratch the itch that I need. And that's hack and slash and shooters. Now, I'm using that word loosely. I'm not talking about, like, just boomer shooters. And I'm not talking about just, like, multiplayer shooters. I'm talking about everything in between. You know, there's plenty of games I like. 1 minute I could be playing, I don't know, Ultra Kill. And the next minute I could be playing COD. You know, it's kind of like a meet-in-the-middle type thing. Like, some days I'm feeling like this shooter. And some days I'm feeling like a third-person shooter. And some days I'm feeling like a first-person shooter. And I'm feeling like a boomer shooter, you know, and that kind of thing. Like a retro shooter. Which, by the way, speaking of retro shooters, there's this game called Wrecker. It's like Rekkr, I think it's called. Wrecker, the Sunken Lands, I believe. Pretty good. It's got, I think it actually might be a GZ Doom game. I'm not sure. But it's pretty good. It's on Steam. I like it a lot. Pretty fun game. Just to give you guys an idea of how retro I like it, you know, kind of. I go back to like old Doom, and then I go to like Doom Eternal. You know, I kind of go between them. And then the other third game type genre that I like a lot is platformers. Surprisingly enough, I love platformers when they're done right. Now, granted, I guess you could also say like there's also Metroidvanias, but I'm not like the biggest Metroidvania guy. But I do have my Metroidvanias that I like. Metroid being mainly the one that I really like, and then Symphony of the Night, you know, and Bloodstained. Oh man, whew. I loved Bloodstained, and I love Symphony of the Night too. It's pretty good. I mean, if you guys, you know, are ever wanting to look for Metroidvanias that are pretty fun, I'd recommend those. And like I said, you know, most of Metroid's pretty good. I would argue this might be a little controversial, but I would argue that most of Metroid's good. It's just a matter of, I mean, everything's a matter of taste, no matter what you do. But in my opinion, a lot of Metroid's pretty good because I highly respect Metroid 1, but I don't like playing it that much. Mainly because I get lost so damn easily and I just get tired of it and I look at the map. Same thing with Metroid 2. Like, when I was doing my Metroid Marathon, which was just kind of like me just playing the games, not on stream or anything, but just by myself, which probably should have been done on stream, but I was kind of afraid that people were going to make fun of me for being a loser and getting lost all the time in those older games and then needing a map for things. But yeah, I respect 2. I think 2 is neat. I think it's got some cool stuff that they added, but you know, I won't play it all the time. And then Super Metroid's great, but I don't play that nearly as much as I would play like Zero Mission or even Dread for that matter. Dread came out and man, that killed everything for me. I played that game a lot when it came out, and 8 times is a lot, just saying. But that wasn't like, you know, one after another after another. That was more so like, okay, this time I'm going to do this. Okay, this time I'm going to do this. Okay, now Dread Mode, you know, releases in April. For those that might have remembered that was a pretty fun time. Like, Dread Mode release, and it's like, oh, man. I might one day, I keep planning on doing it. I don't know which one I want to start with first. Either I want to start with a Dread guide, or if I want to start with a hard mode guide for Dread. I don't know. I don't know. But a Metroid guide would be awesome to do one day. Just because I like Metroid. I also like the Primes. I'm not a big fan of Prime Hunters, and I don't have the newest Federation Force. I never got that one. That's like, I think, like one of the only Metroids I don't have. And I've said this before as a joke, but I don't have Samus Goes to the Fridge to get milk, or whatever the fuck it's called. I don't have that. I've never played that. So I guess I'm not a true Metroid fan. But there is another Metroid game that I don't think people seem to bring up a lot, and that's the, what the fuck is it called? You guys probably know the one I'm talking about, but the one on Newgrounds, or at least on those other sites, if you know what I'm getting at. The one where you shoot her suit off. You know what I'm talking about? That type of game. But there's plenty of those. If those were canon, Jesus Christ, I'd be here all damn day. But, yeah, so I like Metroid a lot, but those are Metroidvanias I kind of recommend. In terms of platformers, like, I like collectathons, but I don't like... This is where things get kind of weird. I don't really like DK64 or even Banjo that much. I used to like Banjo a lot, but now I don't. For me personally, a collectathon that I tend to like is just, you know... I don't know if you... This is not really much of a platformer, but Luigi's Mansion kind of is. Sort of. Kind of a collectathon, but not really. I guess it is and isn't. And there's also Mario 64 I like, you know... Sunshine's fine, I guess. Galaxy's neat, but... Yeah. Yeah, as you can tell, like, not a lot is really... I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening, of course, but, like, not a lot of this is really intrinsic or even really, like, that hard at this point. Like, the first... I'd say, like, the first 4 to 5 chapters are nothing. But then all of a sudden, you get to, like, chapter 5 or 6, whichever one it was that had Reflections in Blood, I think it was called. The one where... I mean, hell, I'd even argue, like, the circus one kind of does get a little tough, but not by much. Like, I get close to dying in those chapters, but not as much as I would toward, like, the Mirror Ricks, you know? Those are the little bastards that get me the most, and they show up again, like, in chapter 11. And that's kind of why I would consider this game, especially on no upgrade run, it's really, strangely enough, not incredibly hard. I mean, there again, you know, like I said, there's a lot of spots in this game that can be taken as hard, but for the most part, I feel like a lot of people can do this with some ease. I feel like, you know, having the upgrades makes the game a lot easier, of course, but yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like this game's ever gotten any. I don't. It got a little harder, but not by much. And they're only in like specific sequences, so yeah, I don't know. Speaking of which, that reminds me, I gotta go to my channel page and change Dante, because I give it a 7 out of 10, but I think that's too high. I'm gonna give it like a 6 out of 10 for difficulty, mainly just because of the fact that, I mean, yeah, the final boss really eats your ass, but that's mostly about it, really. I mean, most of the game is a lot easier when you kind of dissect it and kind of understand where things are. Oh, that was my stummy. Hopefully that didn't show up in recording. But yeah, this is, what's his name? Big E-Man, I think it's called. And, of course, he's been here since, like, you know, the first game. And you kind of just use the shotgun side-scroller on the first game type thing. It's a cool little reference. Neat little cameo. And the thing with him, though, is every time that you get him into this position where he gets grabbed inside of a splatter kill, even though it's not really a splatter kill, but yeah, that's what they were called again. They were called splatter kills. You'll get necro back. You get like 2 bars of necro. And then he does this shit, too, where like you try to avoid him, and that's where the upgrades kind of come in handy if you were upgrading the game, is you could have invincible and make it to where you don't actually get hurt. But luckily for me, since he chopped off my arm, which I think is, for the most part, I think it's got like a randomness to it. But I've never like fully tested that, says the guy that, you know, pretends like he knows all the jank of the game, but yet I don't know that. But yeah, like when you get your arm chopped off, that's a good weapon to use. Just immediately right after, just siphon and then pick up your arm and then just do some damage to get some necro back, you know? And then after that, of course, once you get past like the second phase of this fight, you're stuck, you know, with a chainsaw, and this is where things get even more easier. And right there, I just kind of just preemptively attacked him with the siphon just because I kind of figured maybe he'll come after me. Now, if I remember correctly, and I could be wrong, of course, if I remember correctly, I don't think the chainsaw breaks in this fight. But it has been a while since I've actually had to use the chainsaw to fully kill him off. 'Cause normally I go for Berserk and just kind of just waste him down, because there's a few attacks in Berserker mode that actually do some damage. And notice how sometimes I don't even like finish the combo for like a full square attack, and that's mainly just because I'm trying to utilize the speed of the other attacks beforehand. It's kind of like with the cross attacks in Dante's Inferno, where I don't upgrade them fully. But anyway, that's it for this, so take care, everybody.